Hello, my name is Shazam Jack Hubris. Today I would like to speak with you about the topic of sexual intercourse or boning. Boning intercourse can take place between many different types of living mammals, reptiles, and crustaceans even. Sexual boning or intercourse can happen when a dongus goes into a diddle slit. It can also happen when two diddle slits press up against each other or when dongus is poked. It can also happen when a dongus goes in the rear basket, or it can go when a pie hole goes upon a dongus or a liquor upon a diddle slit, or vice versa, so on and so forth. I hope I've demonstrated here today that sexual intercourse between living beings can happen in many different ways, in many different circumstances and contexts. Okay, now that we've finished that, let's go into the question of sexual morality and ethics from the Zen Buddhist perspective. Thank you. Ohayou gozaimasu! Your narrator here, by the name of Jack, was having a conversation recently. Won't say with whom or what about. Suffice to say that the topic of sexual intercourse and Zen Buddhism and the question of ethics came up. Who to bone, when, where, and why. This is an extremely important issue that human animals face, and I've been meaning to do a video about it for a while. So this afternoon I spent some time doing a deep dive into sexual research on the internet. That's not what it sounds like. No pornography was involved. I perused article after banal Buddhist speak article by various well-intentioned but profoundly uninteresting Zen ethical type teachers on the topic of the Vinaya, the precepts, sexual intercourse, etc. And I grew more and more just bored, really. It's interesting. The topic of sex can feel like something totally and completely apart from spirituality. And as a result, when one starts feeling aroused, one's practice, one's principles, one's Zen Buddhism just fades. And one's appetite must be consummated, and then one can get back to practicing. But I have found the intersection of boning and Zen to be fruitful for both sides of that equation. So I finally decided what I would do for this video is let you go research Buddhism, sex, Zen, precepts, etc., however and whichever and whenever you may want to. What I'm going to do is just offer a few stories from my time as a monk to maybe point to some subtler links we can draw, or associations we can draw, or insights, or maybe even lessons or teachings we can draw from the topic of sex and ethics. Here we go. Rinzai Zen Buddhist monks are not asked by the tradition or their teachers, generally speaking, to be celibate. Like most things in Zen, Rinzai Zen at least, in my experience, there is a double sense of playfulness and responsibility. Now, my teacher, or my teachers in the Zen tradition, never said this to me outright, but after a while I began to realize that the general approach to ethics in my community was something along the lines of go ahead. You can do what you want or what you need to do. We can't crawl inside your head. We can't see what's going on in there. It's not our business. It's also not our problem. Just don't make it our problem by getting in trouble and getting other people in trouble. And by the way, whatever you do, you're ultimately going to have to take responsibility for it. So go ahead and embark upon your various adventures, sexual or otherwise. But know this, what activities you do in life, you have to take responsibility for, always, in one way or another, in the end. So this was a really important lesson to me as a monk. I always found, whether it was smoking a cigarette behind the bathhouse or having a relationship with a woman while I was getting ordained, which I'll get to in a bit, no matter what it is, you have to take responsibility for it. So this is the sense of Zen ethics in my experience. Ethics equals taking responsibility for things. The spring before the summer I got ordained, which is to say the summer of my Tokudo Shiki, which is a big moment in a Zen student's life. It's when you take tonsure and the teacher will shave a little part of your head to signify that you're becoming a monk. You get given your monk's name. You do a ordination ceremony. You do bows before your parents or two empty chairs that signify your parents, indicating that you are leaving them, you're leaving the home, and you're becoming a monk. I was getting ready to become a monk that spring. And we had some seminars at one of our affiliate centers. And I went there, and there was a student from a nearby college who was attending these Buddhist seminars. And she and I struck up a little bit of a friendship, which became a relationship. The day of my ordination, I'm still kind of in a relationship with her, but it's messy because I'm becoming a monk, and so it's like I can call her like once a month from California, where my monastery is. Nonetheless, she comes to my ordination, and I will never forget, I was wearing my robes, and I was very busy the morning of my ordination, and this girlfriend was coming, and she was going to stay at the monastery for a few days because she was kind of like a Zen student with another teacher. So it was one of these things where everybody kind of knew she was my friend, and nobody was really saying anything. And at one point, I had to drive down the hill to pick up some people from the airport on an extremely busy day. This is the only time I was going to be down the hill, and I couldn't ask anybody else who was going down the hill to do this shopping trip for me, which was condoms. So I remember I'm wearing my robes on the morning of the day I got ordained, and I'm getting ready to go pick up some people from the airport, but I zoom into a Ralph's grocery store, and I'm standing in my robes in the checkout line with the condoms. And I'm standing there in these robes, and I put them down on front of the woman who's checking me out, and I'll never forget the look that she gave me. Cut to like several months later. So my girlfriend was going to visit me at the end of a training. She and I were only together probably maybe 4 months or something, but she was gonna visit me. I think it was at the end of our summer training season, right? And so I decided not to let any air out of the tire during the entire training season. That's a euphemism for onanism, okay? I wasn't going to indulge in self-pleasure the whole training season, all right? So it's gonna be like 3.5 months of zilch. I wound up being fully celibate that training season. And I honestly don't remember what that experience was like. But I remember focusing on it. I remember practicing with it. I remember it being a big part of that training season. I also remember that in the back of my head, I knew my girlfriend was going to be visiting me at the end of the training season. And so as I practiced this very intense form of purity or celibacy, I had in my head the fantasy of the greatest incoming orgasm of my life. I imagined it like that grapefruit-sized ball of matter at the beginning of our universe that exploded and became all of space-time and our entire cosmos. Wasn't quite like that. What happened was my girlfriend came, and I remember it was the very end of the training season, and we had secured a cabin on the property, and the cabin had an attic, and it was just utterly infested by, it was like Dr. Doolittle's magical palace of furry creatures in the ceiling. You could hear them dropping acorns, fighting, squealing, mating. There was a whole universe of animal kingdom up there. And we're on the bed below, right? We commenced, and it wasn't that remarkable. And I remember laying in bed beside her afterwards thinking too much of a focus on either celibacy or sex, too much focus on one or the other, have a really weird way of going exactly hand in hand. So too much focus on sex or too much focus on celibacy, too much focus on either of them have a really weird way of going exactly hand in hand. Celibacy does not allow you to escape the problem or the issue or the reality of sex. In some ways, it just made me become more obsessed with sex, okay? And during certain phases of my life, running around and having sex with a lot of different people, that didn't help me solve the problem either. In some ways, it amplified my horniness, amplified my loneliness, and began to addict me to certain types of behavior. And I saw a really potentially disturbing pattern developing where I would increase the number of people that I slept with, and the pleasure would sort of slowly decrease, and my feelings for and my connection to the people that I was hooking up with would decrease. So the problem of sexuality and the ethics around it are not easy to solve, either through licentious behavior, having fun, getting your rocks off, or by throwing all that aside and being a saint. There's also the fact that, at least for me, prolonged absence of sexual behavior starts to make me pervy. I get so overheated with desire that it can sometimes just be easier to let a little air out of the tire and get on with my life. Now, this is all before I found myself in a nice relationship. So it's kind of funny, after throwing out my Catholic morality and joining the Zen practice where I was completely free to screw up my life however I saw fit to do in the bedroom, I kind of learned the lesson that actually sex is powerful. It's kind of it's powerful. It is a powerful activity that releases some really strong, deep energies and feelings in people. Maybe it's just me, but I always felt myself connected in a new and different way after I had sex with someone. It was just cool. And sometimes if I didn't really like that person before I slept with them, suddenly I was developing magical new feelings, right? Which led to trouble down the road because sex isn't that big of a deal anyways. And now I had inadvertently sealed myself to this person because I had spilled body fluids with them once or twice, you know? So as I said, gradually I have come to a respect, capital R, respect for the activity and practice of sex. It's serious business. It's a lot of fun, you may have noticed, but it's serious too. So these days I just practice that activity with my lovely girlfriend. And if you can find yourself in that kind of a situation, it seems like that's a really good way to thread this very difficult needle between being a whore and being a celibate. And I've been both. I guess maybe this is the point of this video. And thanks for joining me on this journey, which, by the way, I've been doing in my underpants because it's hot. Okay, listen. In my personal experience and humble opinion, in closing, I have found that when it comes to the ethics of sex, it's really situational. And it helps to, as much as one can, not objectify a person through sexuality. Unless, of course, you've got a partner and you're playing some kind of game or another, right? There are contexts you can do it in. So, again, I like being in a relationship. It happens to be a monogamous relationship, as far as I'm aware. So it allows me to act out certain desires. So there's a pair of philosophers in France, or I think they're dead now. They're called Deleuze and Guattari. They wrote a book, Anti-Capitalism and Schizophrenia, or something Oedipus complex or something. I don't know what it was, but I will never forget, as I tried to read through this insane book, this concept that they had of the plasticity of desire, right? So the idea is desire is malleable and it can change shapes and it's not fixated. And this is a very Zen thing. And my thoughts have often been that this strange human animal with its sexual kinks and its strong desires, from Helen of Troy to Marilyn Monroe to Timothy Chalamet, I don't know. It seems like human beings are just packed with a ton of nuclear power desire. But it's kind of plastic. We can direct it in certain things. And if we're not careful, we're going to direct it in an unskillful way, and we will harm ourselves and others. But within the context of a relationship, with some rules and some boundaries, we can play. You know what I'm saying? So I have found that it's beneficial for me to have an edge of desire. So to be just on the edge of desire within my relationship. This can mean, not to get too specific here on the flipping internet, what is my problem? Maybe we'll do, maybe every other time I will come, right? So one time I won't, the next time I will, one time I won't. And so I find there's an edge of desire. And instead of always being sated, like a big fat slob eating his cheeseburger, it will be every other time. She's going to be sated every time, if you know what I mean, but I'll do every other time. Okay, so having an edge of desire as opposed to an expectation for constant fulfillment, I've found is helpful. I've also found it's helpful within the context of this relationship, monogamous relationship, to go to places that are new within the relationship. So everybody is always desiring everybody. I think that's kind of how it works. Plasticity of desire. We have a certain store of untapped desire inside of us. And I don't know about you, but I walk down the street and inadvertently practice that horror of all horrors, which is the male gaze, right? Sometimes I even gaze at males with my male gaze. And then they gaze back at me like, what are you gazing at, bro? But I just gaze, right? And my girlfriend does it too. One time we were in the park and this dude jogged past. I didn't even notice him. But she said, okay, this is going to be explicit. She said, sometimes someone will just walk past me and I'll get a scent or something. She said, and my just gets right? So, man, this is how we roll as human beings. And I found that it's great to practice new things within an older relationship. So it can be role playing, it can be behaviors, it can be positions, it can be new places, all sorts of things you can do. So you've got this great storehouse of passion. Use it in your relationship. I think this is a way of using the strict boundaries of a relationship with rules and guidelines to release the power of one's loins, right? And this is a very Zen thing. In Zen, you have very strong rules and strictures and boundaries and guidelines within the form of the practice, and it releases this amazing depth, power, and energy in your spiritual life. And within the strictures and form of a monogamous relationship, I have found great energies of, explosions of energies, if you will, can emerge from that relationship. Sexuality-wise, okay, I think we've beaten this dead horse enough, wouldn't you say? Thanks for listening. If you have any thoughts about sex and spirituality, please leave them in the comments section below. I'd like to hear what you have to say. It's been a little bit of an ambiguous ride today, but I absolutely refused to make a video wherein I've talked about, the precepts and the Vinaya and what you can and cannot do. I wanted to talk maybe more about the feel of sexuality within a monastery, within a Zen practice, and now within my monogamous relationship. So I hope you got something out of it. If you did, you can support me here, patreon.com/showsonjackcarter. You can also go to the description in this video where there's the PayPal link. You can make a one-time donation if you wish, but you don't have to. I give these videos for free and I have a great time doing it. Thanks for putting up with me. Thanks for not throwing your phone across the room when I was trying to be funny. Thanks for not canceling me because I did this video in my underwear. Folks, I'll see you next time. In the meantime, keep on keeping on, baby.